we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base.
They can't even make eye contact. It's one of those things where you know you're going to just bust out laughing because you realize what a moron this woman is. As you know, the media has been sheltering Kamala Harris. She hasn't had to answer any questions. She hasn't had to give an interview. She hasn't had to give a press conference. She's been scripted. She is a product. She's just it's a Hollywood script they've created here. And remember, like 3 months ago, the media was openly speculating about Joe Biden replacing Kamala Harris on the ticket because she was a punchline. She was a joke. Now, I told you 3 months ago that ultimately Kamala Harris would be the nominee. They couldn't go forward with Joe Biden, and they were going to have to be stuck with Kamala. And so you were prepared for this. I don't think the media was prepared for how bad she is, though. Her staff, they've been protecting her, but they can't continue to do it, right? So they trotted her out this weekend, and they sort of tested the waters, answering a question of a reporter. She was in Pennsylvania. I think she was like hopping off her bus, going into a sandwich shop or something. And, last week she announced her big communist takeover of the economy, including $25,000 free money for anybody for a first-time down payment on a house, and the increase of the child tax credit up to $6,000, which, by the way, they stole completely from the Trump campaign. Now, any person, any politician who proposes major financial moves like this, major economic impact on the budget, because $25,000, that ain't nothing. And for every first-time homebuyer to get free 25 grand, that's going to cost some money on the budget. You have to offset it with either budget cuts or with tax increases, right? Any politician knows that. So Kamala Harris was asked, how are you going to pay for it? Watch her off the cuff, unscripted, right off the top of her head response to a simple question like, how are you going to pay for this?
You unveiled some economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself.
Return on investment is the magic word of the day, apparently. It's like she made a bet with somebody before she went off the bus. Hey, guys, I'm going to answer a question, and I want $100 every time I say return on investment. But first of all, it has to be explained to Kamala Harris and every Democrat and everyone in the media, apparently, that these are not investments. Investments are money that you put into something that might appreciate over time and then give you a return on your investment, right? You can either invest in a business or a company or in gold or that sort of thing. This is a big government program that uses tax dollars to pick winners and losers and just hand out free money. That's not an investment. And you don't actually get a return on that into the federal budget. You may think that it's good for guys. Well, what did she say? This is going to help child poverty and it's going to help children because of the earned. That's fine. That's maybe a noble cause, but the money's got to come from somewhere. This isn't an answer in any way whatsoever. And of course, she talked herself into circles, and she just kept going back to her little comfort blanket. Well, return on investment. Just say return on investment. Trust me, it'll be fine. It pays for itself. No, it really, really, really doesn't pay for itself in any way whatsoever. But the word salad continues. Frankly, I like a little oil and vinegar, maybe some balsamic with my word salad, but instead this one was served dry. She went off script at a campaign event, a smallish one in Pennsylvania. You know, when they do the big rallies with all the cameras, they make sure the teleprompters are there and they're scripted. But here we are. And by the way, do you notice this happened in the last clip too? In the background, you see her husband, Doug Emhoff. You know, he's the guy who had sex with the babysitter and got her pregnant. Yeah, that guy. You look in the background here. Where are they? And they're always looking up. They can't even make eye contact. It's one of those things where you know you're going to just bust out laughing because you realize what a moron this woman is. So Walz is staring at the ground with his wife. They look like they're mourning something. Like, is there a coffin there on the floor? It's like, and then Doug Emhoff is just staring off into space. Look at the kind of loving, devotional support she has from her husband and her running mate. So same thing with this one. They're standing in the background and look again. What's with Tim Walz constantly staring at the ground? It's like, I can't, because if I look up, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to laugh because she's such a moron. Here she is talking about democracy. She's a Democrat. You would think that she would have 39 seconds of just standard boilerplate. What a wonderful country and democracy we are. But listen to this word salad and how bad she is when she goes off script.
Our election is about understanding the importance of this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe as a democracy. As a democracy, we know there's a duality to the nature of democracy. On the one hand, incredible strength when it is intact, what it does for its people to protect and defend their rights, their liberty, and their freedom. Incredibly strong and incredibly fragile.
Well, I'm sold. I think Miss South Carolina is going to do just great this week at the big pageant. There is a duality democracy. I hadn't really thought about it, you know, because she's so deep and she thinks on a higher plane than the rest of us. But at least the delivery is good. Look at Tim Walz, like someone shot his puppy. What is going on here? And is this not a beta stance? Look at the hands. Isn't that somebody? We got to get the, hey, Kevin, can we do a special segment with the body language experts to talk about Tim Walz's hand position here? That's got to be, that's like uber beta, isn't it? All right, so they know they can't just trot Kamala Harris out. She's wholly unlikable. She speaks in word salad Mad Lib limericks, and she doesn't know her own policies, right? So they decided for the Sunday shows, what they're going to do is trot out some other people who are way smarter and incredibly more appealing and likable and warm. Like, the Wicked Witch of Lansing, Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan. When this is the warm and fuzzy, appealing version of your candidate, you're going to have a rough 80 days ahead of you, okay? So I got to hand it to Kristen Welker at Meet the Press. She asked this question, which I think she expected Gretchen Whitmer to have a better answer to. Otherwise, she would have never asked it, right? But she said, you know, some people are nervous about Tim Walz because he had some radical left-wing policies up there when it came to illegal aliens, you know, giving them free health care, giving them driver's license, giving them, you know, whatever they wanted, just like Gavin Newsom out there in California. Should people be worried about that, you know, rolling out to the national level? Let's see how Gretchen handled that tough line of questioning.
Well, let me ask you about her running mate, Tim Walz, and particularly on the issue of immigration. Obviously, some of his policies in his state have come into focus. He signed into law initiatives allowing undocumented immigrants to apply for driver's licenses, free tuition at public universities, and enroll in the state's free health care program for low-income residents. Would you like to see the Harris administration adopt those same policies, Governor?
Well, I can tell you, you know, Tim Walz is a pragmatic guy. He's a Midwesterner just like me. And I think some of the wonderful things he's done in Minnesota resonate with, you know, Americans in all states.
Well, let me ask you about her running.
Wow. So it's a real easy way to say, listen, First of all, he's the running mate and he's running for vice president. So his job is to focus on Kamala Harris's priorities, number one. And number two, when you're a governor, you have a different set of problems that need to be addressed at your state's level. And he thought that it was prudent and judicious to handle these things based on the circumstances in Minnesota. But a solution for Minnesota is not necessarily going to be the best solution for Alabama or for North Carolina. So I think that everyone just needs to settle down about it. No, instead, she said, well, seems practical and pragmatic to me. Sure. Free driver's license, free health care, and free college tuition if you're an illegal immigrant. Think about this for a minute. You're an American citizen, or even better, you're a legal immigrant to this country. You came here 10 years ago, and you came here the right way, and you followed all the laws and followed all the rules, and you pay your taxes. And you have a child who now wants to go to college, and you don't live in Minnesota. You live in another state. But your child really wants to go to University of Minnesota because Golden Gophers, right? Who wouldn't? So your child, your U.S. citizen child of you, also a legal U.S. citizen, your child applies to the University of Minnesota and they get accepted. Of course, it's going to cost you $75,000 a year, but that's okay because that's the American way. So you now have to pay $75,000 a year for your child, your American citizen child of you, an American citizen, to go to the University of Minnesota. But a family who just arrived here last year, illegally crossing the border, relocating to Minnesota, and they have a child who graduates, they get into the University of Minnesota, they go tuition free, thanks to Governor Tim Walz. And Gretchen Whitmer, the surrogate for the Harris campaign, calls that pragmatic. You can't tell me that this is not a very clear choice this November between two different approaches to the federal government. By the way, we have another video here to describe exactly how Kamala Harris is going to pay for all that, because that whole return on investment thing apparently isn't washing. So we got a good other alternative response to it.
There's so many Trump supporters in my comments right now asking me dumb questions like this because they clearly don't understand how the economy works. Let me explain how it's perfectly feasible for Kamala to give everybody free money. If you'll look at this chart behind me, you'll see a weather map, and you can clearly see here that almost every day in the US it rains. Like all over the country it rains. Okay, and what do we know happens after it rains? One of these things pops up. Okay, what Kamala's planning to do is when the rainbow comes up, we're going to have a task force of people go out to the end of the rainbow where they will find one of these. These kind gentlemen have been giving out pots of gold to us for generations. And what happens is the other politicians have known about this secret and they just take the gold for themselves. Like they don't even share it. But what Kamala's planning to do is pump these pots of gold into the economy and back into the hands of the American people. And I commend her for that. So y'all need to get woke, okay? It's time to be unburdened by what has been.
All right. Well, I mean, it's hard to argue with that kind of logic. It's as good a option as any that I can see. In fact, that could be the candidate for Kamala Harris's Council of Chief Economic Advisors, as far as I know. Tim Walz, by the way, the aforementioned, who decided to give free tuition and free health care and driver's license to anyone in his country illegally, no matter whether they've got criminal records or they've been vetted or what have you. Tim Walz was also at that same campaign appearance with Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania, and he said something that's getting a lot of attention. And I've got some opinions about this too. Let's listen first.
Some of us who have less hair and are old enough can remember when you could go to Thanksgiving, watch a Steelers game with your relatives, and not complain about politics the whole time, not be on each other's neck, because you shared a commitment to democracy, a commitment to personal freedom, a commitment to public education, a commitment to infrastructure. We don't call each other names. We don't do it. And we don't use the least fortunate amongst us as punchlines for our jokes because they're our neighbors. They're our neighbors. And so you're
All right. So first of all, I don't know about you, but whenever I get together with my family at Thanksgiving, we love to hold hands and thank God for the blessings of our shared support of infrastructure. It's always at the top of the list. Do people really talk like this? But let's go to the beginning part of this because, oh, and by the way, this guy, no self-respecting Minnesotan would go, even if you're running for office, you don't go there to Allegheny County and start talking about how you love watching Steelers games. First of all, the Steelers don't play on Thanksgiving, okay? It's the Cowboys and the Lions, right? Maybe the Steelers, are playing one of those two teams. But if you're a Vikings fan, you don't talk about how great it is to watch a Steelers game. That's just right there. That shows you what kind of fraud he is. But this part really caught people's eyes.
Some of us who have less hair and are old enough can remember when you could go to Thanksgiving, watch a Steelers game with your relatives, and not complain about politics the whole time.
All right. Now, a couple of things that need to be pointed out. The first is in Tim Walz's Minnesota during the pandemic, if you went to your family's house at Thanksgiving, well, you ran the risk of being fined or arrested even. The neighbors were looking out the window and calling his snitch line because he outlawed Thanksgiving. I'm not being hyperbolic. Waltz announced Wednesday that new restrictions will be in place on Thanksgiving, target a number of social activities, including gatherings between households, indoor dining, youth sports. Oh, there goes your Steelers games. Walt said the restrictions will go into effect starting Friday and will last until December 18th. We understand that it's hard not to celebrate Thanksgiving with the people you love, said Dr. Cindy Firkins-Smith, president and CEO of Caris Health. This guy is now, oh, remember the golden days when we could go to Thanksgiving? When he was given the power as a governor, he prohibited Thanksgiving from being celebrated. What a fraud. But there's more to it than that. I've actually had a couple of Thanksgivings that were ruined because of political talk. I live in a family where there are divergent political opinions. I obviously am a conservative Republican, but not everyone in my family is a conservative Republican. And I am old enough, Tim Walz, to remember when I could go to Thanksgiving and I didn't have everything screwed up by people picking fights over politics. But then something changed in this country, and Tim Walz and the Democrats are trying to make you think that what changed was Trump. Trump ruined everything. Now we debate politics and we fight about politics all the time, and it's ruining holidays. Well, I can tell you, in my mixed family, every single time a holiday is ruined by politics, it's not because the Trump supporters or the Republicans or the conservatives decide that they want to start talking politics. Nope, it's always this guy. It's always this guy at the table. There's always a pajama boy who just came back from college and his professor or his girlfriend or Barack Obama has inspired him to wear pajamas, drink hot chocolate, and talk about getting health insurance. Let's get talking. Oh, well, Larry, that's the Obama administration. You can't blame Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for that. Really? Because this has the Biden-Harris logo on it. Here's your handy guide for responding to crazy MAGA nonsense this Thanksgiving. Barack Obama is the guy who compelled his supporters to get into people's faces and start debating politics with them. Listen, your grandma might have a different opinion about politics and healthcare, and you got to convince her otherwise. So we're going to give you all talking points to take back to Thanksgiving and Christmas so you can convince the people in your family how wrong they are. That's where this all started. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit back and let Tim Walz and the Democrats rewrite history and tell us that the vitriol and division that we've got in this country right now over politics is all Trump's fault. And that's exactly what they're doing, make no mistake. This morning, Joe Scarborough, Morning Joe on MSNBC. They're telegraphing their punches. They all have the same talking points. Watch.
You know, there really is. Sam's right. There is a generational divide here that usually sells very well in presidential politics if it's carried through the right way. I will say also, the one word that I always saw as Donald Trump's biggest challenge was exhaustion. Not his personal exhaustion, but the exhaustion of those who had supported him in 2016, some who still supported him in 2020, but were exhausted, especially after January the 6th.
You see, this is what they're going to do. Oh, the American people, we're just done with this and all the division. We're just exhausted. Can we just move on? And if we get Trump again, that means it's going to be 4 more years of this. Let's just turn the page. Even if the policies were better, even if the economy was better, it's just, I'm just exhausted by it all. That's what they're trying to do. Listen to him again.
Us who have less hair and are old enough can remember when you could go to Thanksgiving, watch a Steelers game with your relatives, and not complain about politics the whole time.
In other words, vote for us and we promise not to ruin your Thanksgiving anymore. But if you vote for the other guy, I'm sorry, we're just going to screw you up again. We're going to be there every single holiday calling you a racist. So you better vote for us. That's what they're saying. And for Joe Scarborough to say, oh, there's just people are just exhausted by the Trump thing. Yeah, it's really great that for the last 8 years of our life, we've been lied to and screamed at and defamed and slandered by Joe Scarborough and his pals in the media. Yeah, we're exhausted, all right. We're exhausted from Russian collusion. We're exhausted by the very fine people on both sides. We're exhausted by insurrection. We're exhausted by all of the lies you continue to tell on a daily basis. We're exhausted having to fight and defend ourselves and to tell the truth while you just lie every single day whenever you get an opportunity. And then when you're caught in the lie, you just move on and never apologize. You're damn right we're exhausted. We're exhausted because you've exhausted us. But we are not going to buy into this. And no one's going to let them rewrite history. Let's swing back over here to a CNN segment they did with Democrat voters asking them where they stand right now on the election. Actually, forgive me, it's Republican voters. And they specifically talked to Republican voters who did not support Donald Trump. And I want you to hear from this one person because this is all you need to know. Between now and Election Day, this is what you need to adopt. For all those friends of yours in your life who are like, I don't like the tweets, and I don't like that he calls people names, and I just don't like the division, and I don't like all the mean. This is what you need to tell them.
I see Kamala and I see Walz as being so far left that it concerns me. I'm comfortable with Trump. We had 4 years of Trump. We know what Trump is. I'm not voting for him to be my Valentine. I'm not voting for him to be my best friend.
That's right. Period. End of discussion. Please don't try to convince your friends, oh, Trump's really likable. Now, listen, there are some people who just don't like Trump, okay? Why fight that? I'm being serious. I'm being honest. I mean, listen, I find him amusing. But if you don't see why people don't like him, come on. He's a New Yorker. New Yorkers are obnoxious, okay? That's not everybody's cup of tea. The answer is, who cares? I'm sorry, honestly, I think there's probably been 2 likable presidents in our history, Ronald Reagan and George Washington. And guess what? The left hated Ronald Reagan too. You're not electing him to be your girlfriend or your boyfriend. You're not electing him to be your Valentine. You're not electing him to be your best friend. You're electing him to fix what's broken. And sometimes it takes an to fix what's broken. Sometimes you want somebody to get in there and be a son of a. That's how we fix things. We're not exhausted. We're not sick and tired. We're not done with this, not by a long shot. That's what they want you to feel. They want you to feel fatigued. They want you to be done with it. It's like, oh, all right, fine, let's just get through it. Nope, not this time. Not this time. That may have worked in 2020 with the pandemic and the COVID and all that, but no, not this time. Stakes are too high. It's not going to work. And you will not ruin another Thanksgiving.